Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of For the Painter Good. Again, I'm your host here, Sean. Today I'm going to take you through something a little bit different today. We're going to have a look at some Chaos Knights list. A bunch of you are probably looking forward to those releases. That new Knight Ruinator is particularly tasty, to be honest with you. I wouldn't mind getting one of those myself if my financial constraints didn't prevent me from doing so. My financial constraints being, of course, the new Kill Team box that came out the week after and the impending Space Wolves second wave release. However, I decided what we would do today is, I do have a burgeoning Chaos Knights army myself, so I thought we'd take a look at 3 separate lists here, just that you can potentially build with the new models that are coming out for the Chaos Knights, and then just what's currently there within the range, basically. See if we can come up with some fun narrative style lists. A couple of these will probably have some models in my own personal collection because they're what I'm going to look at. But without further ado, let's get started. This first list, we're going to kick it off with a Knight Tyrant. Now, I do own one of these, so this is probably my personal preference involved here, basically, in that kind of stuff. The Knight Tyrant is what I think is one of the pinnacle Chaos Knights models, basically, and that kind of stuff. You can't get much bigger than this enormous gunline Titan, basically, effectively. It's the only thing that you can get that's just shy of a Titan, effectively. As you can see, you can do different weapon variants as well. If you want to kit him out for close combat, he can do the harpoon and the big flamer as well. I personally went for the more gunline variant on mine because I like plasma. So that's what I did. I went with the gunline, I went with the Volcano Lance and the Mega Plasma Incinerator. I'm going to call it the Mega Plasma Incinerator. That's not what it's called. The word cannot come into my head right now, so apologies for that. But it is a particularly tasty model. It's one that I myself enjoy very much. Hopefully in the background here you can see a bit of B-roll where I have done my own very similar to this one on the website here, which is generally excellent, I think, to be honest with you. The second of the big knights we're going to put in here is the Knight Abominant. Again, another one that I own myself, but for me aesthetically, it is my favorite looking Chaos Knight. It's one of the ones that holds truest to the whole chaotic transformation of these knights to these dread blades. So it's in the 2 of these is the essential core of this particular list. So just to break down this list, these 2 are our king and queen of the court. They will be leading their court into battle, basically, effectively. You can call the Tyrant your king if you want. You can call the Abominant your king. You can do either or. Personally, I like to think of the Abominant as the king and the Tyrant as the queen. And part of my thinking behind that is, in chess, the queen is the one that does the most damage, and I like to think that the Tyrant is going to do way more damage than the Abominant in this case. So, those are our 2 big knights in the list. Next up, we're going to break it down with the following. We're going to use 2 carnivores, a stalker, 2 brigands, 2 huntsmen, and 2 executioners. So here we've got our 2 carnivores. Really just your close combat heavy hitters. They're your punch and melee. That's what you want to do with them. So that's why I've actually put 2 of them in. Now, for this video, I'm going to be using the points values provided by Auspex Tactics. These are probably the closest points that we can get to them being true before the codex comes out and that kind of thing. They're received from multiple other sources as well. So I will be purely creating these lists off of that. So our 2 carnivores offer our big punch in close combat. These are the hounds of this court. They're the ones that run forwards and engage the enemy straight away into close combat there. They've got a mean punch. That Slaughter Claw is particularly good at killing those high wound count models. And the Chainsaw obviously just has your sweep attack then in the background as well. These aren't meta lists per se, but I do like to think about how the armies will play when I construct them as well. I want to have good, fun armies with how they play, basically. So that's my idea behind that. So that's why the 2 carnivores are in this list. 280 points isn't too bad for the 2 of them either. Obviously, I think they've had a little bit of a side grade, but I'm not going to be touching too much on the rules basis here. The War Dog Stalker, we're only going to have 1 of these in this list. The Stalker is particularly good. Again, I don't think he's potentially as good as he was in the Index, but again, I'm not touching too much on the rules. But one of the reasons I will put the Stalker in this, I like that he used to be able to be a character. In my mind, he will still be like a Hound Master, effectively. But from a gameplay perspective as well, that ability to have this scout move now before the game starts is particularly good, I think, because knights are big. We're big vehicles. We're not a particularly like fast army. So that ability to get the scout move before the game starts will be massively useful in terms of that. It'll massively, massively help us get up the board, basically, and put that early pressure on. He's got a slaughter claw of his own, does absolutely no harm. A nice big chain gun as well in there. So it certainly won't do any harm in terms of that as well. So that would be the purpose of him. Don't think you need more than one, but he can be chopped and changed if you have your own personal preference as well. Most of these war dogs are all about the same points, with the exception of the executioners, which are 130, as opposed to, I think, the rest of them are 140. So they can be chopped and changed if you have your own personal preference. My preference is just for one of them, though, personally. So then we've got the war dog brigands here. These are your kind of more flexible firepower is what I would view them as, effectively, then, and that kind of thing. They'll also line up nicely with the huntsman as well, which I'll touch on a bit later. Obviously, they have both the Gatling cannon and they've also got the demon spear, I think it's called now. It's basically a multi-melta, but it's only 18 inches now, basically. So they've got a bit of anti-infantry and anti-vehicle. It's really good. Again, I think they've had a slight rules change. I just like the look of them. The new war dogs in particular all look very good, I think, to be honest with you. And as this channel is for the painter's good, I buy models on rule of cool here, to be honest with you. I don't buy them on rules. I buy them based on the rule of cool. So that's why I would stick two of them in this list as well. Next up, we've got the war dog huntsman. These guys are particularly useful. These are effectively your anti-tank. The demon spear, or the demon breath spear, I will get it right at least at one point in this video anyway. They're particularly good for obviously your anti-vehicle and that kind of thing. I personally only have one of these at the moment. These are basically just the Armiger kit or the Warglaive kit. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's the Armiger kit because I think it's the Helvern is the one with the auto cannon anyway. These are basically just the Armiger kit. It's not quite as flavorful as the new knights. I'm sure you could just make a new knight in or one of the new war dogs into one of these guys, but I personally only have one of these at the moment. I will have two for the purpose of this list, actually. But these give you your good anti-tank, and they'll complement nicely with the brigands as well, because they've obviously got that chainsword as well for a little bit of a deterrent in melee. Don't forget, we're knights as well, so tank shock is a real and present danger on any of our charges as well. So from that perspective, we're pretty good. Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff about the durability change to knights and that kind of thing, but I think in this list in particular, I didn't really mean for it to be when I first started out. I started this particular list out as, here is your king and queen leading their court of lessers. That's the idea behind this list. That's the narrative stroke behind this list. It's really easy to get behind from a narrative perspective. But actually, it's kind of turned out into a bit of war dog spam, because the last two knights that we've got in this list are two executioners. So if you want to count that up in terms of points, by the way, we're looking at 1,960 points for this list, right? So you've got 40 points left over for a few enhancements, a few kind of tasty enhancements if you want to throw them on there. Our big guys could use probably a couple of enhancements just to toughen them up a bit, because, you know, they're always distraction carnifexes basically and that kind of thing. So we've got to watch out for those in particular. But the two executioners are there. They are basically our elite infantry killer. The autocannons are generally pretty handy for killing some of the bigger targets and that kind of thing. Terminators, a real and present danger, especially with those power fists and that kind of thing, and the durability reduction of Chaos Knights now. Those autocannons are prime targets for killing Terminators. Could do with maybe a pip or two more of AP. A couple of different ways you can unlock that. I think there might be a way or two of unlocking maybe a pip of AP in a detachment, or maybe increasing wound rolls that could make that a little bit better for you. But overall, that's the list. As I said, it's 1,960 points in the nose, 40 points left over for enhancements. Just to touch over it again, it's a Knight Tyrant. a Knight Abominant, 2 Carnivores, 1 Stalker, 2 Brigands, 2 Huntsmen, and 2 Executors. I accidentally leaned a bit into war dog spam with this. There originally wasn't so many war dogs in this list, but the points dropped as I was preparing this video, basically. So I thought it was perhaps uninformative of me and perhaps does a disservice to have not included those new points in this. So I built the list based off of these points. That would be a list I'd be pretty happy to run. A little bit war dog spammy, as I said, but it just means that you could run the war dog detachment effectively if you wanted to. It wouldn't do anything too bad to run it. So that's the idea behind this list. I hope that makes sense. I think there's a lot of versatility in it as well. 9 war dogs was a lot. I didn't go out looking to put 9 war dogs in this list, but as I said, the points changed as I was doing up this video, and it would have been rude of me not to throw it in. Narratively, it still falls into that frame of mind that I wanted to, with the king and queen leading their court, but it's just something to bear in mind as well, effectively here. So our next one then is the Court of Tyrants. I'm going to call this, basically. So this is my list where you get a lot of the big knights in the list. This is where you don't want to do war dog spam. This is the list for you. You will still have a war dog in here, but narratively I'll explain the thinking behind this list. So in this list, we have 1 of every big knight. Just process that for a moment here. The points have dropped so much that we now have 5 big knights in a list available to use. 5 Titanic knights. That for me is quite exciting. As someone who likes knights, as someone who likes chaos knights, for me that's quite exciting. So we're going to kick it off. So we've got five knights in this list. We're going to kick it off with a Knight Tyrant again, effectively. So we know what he does. He's a gunline knight, basically. He's a super stalker. He'll go really well if you want to run, I believe it's the Lords of Dread detachment, I think is the new detachment with the Chaos Knights in it. He'll go particularly well on that. You can bump him up. I think there's something for extra toughness. There's lots of stuff we can do with him. He does exactly what he says on the tin. He just blows your opposition off the board with good shooting. That's what I would use him for, and that's what I see him for. He's effectively like your Castellan, your Dread Castellan, who would hold the fort, basically. Next up on this list, we've got our Knight Rampager, now part of the new Ruinator kit. By the way, how sweet is the Ruinator? Such a good model, such a tasty model, to be honest with you. It's amazing the change that a new face can just put on it as well. Anyway, Rampagers. I love the lore of Rampagers, right? I'm going to just get this out there right now and just tell you a little snippet of something that I heard in a video from the Imperial Iterator YouTube channel. Go and check him out. Absolutely awesome. The lore goes that Rampagers are just incandescent with fury. They want to be straight in the thick of things. They do not hesitate. They are pilots that are lost to the soul of their knight, basically, and then twisted under the powers of chaos, basically. So they just want to murder everything. There is no exceptions there at all, basically, which is really just, it sounds a lot like Khorne Berserkers, if I'm going to be honest with you, and that's probably what they're a little bit based off of as well. But when a Knight Rampager goes into battle, he is chained into a cell in a cargo hold and dropped from orbit in a drop pod, or sometimes they just throw him out of a low orbit hanging ship, and they'll just drop him because it's too dangerous to actually release him properly into it. They snap the chains and they drop him, and that's it. And he's just gonna crush, mulch, and eviscerate everything near him. It's a really cool knight. That's my little lore snippet on the Rampagers done now anyway. But I really like the Rampager in this list. He is your grunt. He is your smasher of walls. He is the one that they're going to try and bring down first because you're going to throw him into the fight. At 335 points, I don't think that's too bad, to be honest with you. He's not a super expensive knight. He's definitely not the most expensive knight. He's actually maybe the second cheapest, tied for the second cheapest, I think, to be honest with you, based on these points for the big knights anyway. So I think he's really good. He's an absolute beatstick, to be honest. And I personally have my eye on getting one for the future for my own Chaos Knights. So I really like him in this list. Next up, we've got the new boy, the Knight Ruinator. So he's really cool. I really like him, to be honest with you. I just like the look of him. I've only seen one game where he's been used. He's really cool looking. The big flamer, the fell bore, the missiles, just absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. And plus, we always want to get the new toys in the list, don't we? We always want to get our new toys in these kind of lists, basically. So this is him in this list. Again, really cool. He's a nice accompaniment to the Rampager in close combat. So you don't have to hurl him quite as hard as the Rampager at somebody, I don't think. That way the Rampager can feel free to just charge up the board, and the Ruinator slinks behind. He's got the Flamer, he softens them up. He's got the missiles, he can soften them up a little bit more. If there's a tank nearby, that Fellbore will just go through it. It'll absolutely mulch it to bits, to be honest with you. So I'm very excited to get one of these myself. This is definitely on my hobby wish list at the moment, the Ruinator. And I might tweak the first list to try and fit the Ruinator in it. So we'll see anyway. But yeah, really looking forward to using him. Next one is we're going back to the Abominant. Abominant, again, one thing I didn't mention about the Abominant before, again, it's kind of rules side of things, but I do want to touch on it a little bit. Aside from being what I think is the coolest looking knight, he actually also plays a little bit into the army rule of Battle Shock, I think, as well. And he's one of the few knights that actually do this to a reasonable extent. Now, whether or not you want to sink 325 points into enforcing your army rule is another thing. But for me, again, this is for the painter's good here. For the love of your own sanity, paint the stuff you want to paint. And for me, I love painting cool models. So for my painter's good, I have one of these ready to be painted or ready to be built, actually. Sorry, tell a lie. I have one of these ready to be built, and I cannot wait to start it. It's on my hobby list of things to build and paint at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to this. And then finally, we've got our Knight Spoiler. By the way, I know this is actually a Desecrator. I'm just not a massive fan of the fact that the Despoiler is basically just a Questoris Knight chassis. For me, I will probably try and run a Despoiler using this kind of chassis. I love the double jointed back legs, the chains going over the top, the spikes coming out. I mean, if you're a Chaos player, you've got to have more spikes, right? That's kind of how it goes. But I do like the aesthetic, actually, of the Questoris Knight chassis. You could play it narratively as he's not fallen as hard to Chaos as some of these knights will have. Basically, he's not as twisted. The world perhaps that he's from hasn't totally fallen to the dark powers yet. It's maybe a little bit it's just seceded from the Imperium slightly and has been deemed heretics as a result. So leave that with you. This is all about crafting your own story behind these lists. So I think the Despoiler is obviously quite a good knight. Double Gatlings is quite effective, I've heard. And generally, he's probably the most flexible knight. He's probably definitely one of the more flexible choices with the weapon varieties you can give him. Just generally a good option, I think. And he's a little bit of a jack of all trades in this list kind of thing. So he's not narrowed down to one specific job, but he can do a couple of different ones, maybe just not quite as well as everyone else. So I think that's really useful to have in a list as well, basically, and that kind of thing, because sometimes those models surprise you. As Play on Tabletop always say, if you don't give your models a chance to do awesome things, they never will. And then lastly, we're going to finish up again with a single carnivore this time. So the single carnivore brings us up to 1,880 points. So we're a little bit shy of being able to add another body into this list. But in the Lords of Dread detachment, I think the enhancements can be a little bit pricey. So it does give us loads of wiggle room. Do you know that way? So, and I know there's not a lot of 35 point enhancements, but if any points change, we're not having to worry too much about changing our list too much. And if they drop down, you'll fit another body in there, no problem. So that should be fine. The Carnivore, again, is the accompaniment to the Rampager. Whereas we'll use the Ruinator to slink up behind them, soften some targets up perhaps. The Carnivore is the accompaniment. This is the Hound and his master, running up the board, smashing into opposition lines, breaking the lines before being pounded by our Knight Tyrant sitting in the backfield, flamed by our Ruinator, pounded by our Despoiler, and battle shocked by our Abominant. So that's the idea behind this list. This in my head, as a narrative focus on it, this is a Dreadblade. This is your Dreadblade coming to battle. This is the entire thing. This is these group of twisted human beings, basically, who are merged with our knights, who are merged. The Rampager has his Hound. We have our artillery piece as the Tyrant. This is the Dreadblade coming to war. This is what Imperial Worlds would fear to see crossing the horizon in the distance. So that's the idea behind this list. And my nickname for this one is the Court of Tyrants. By the way, my nickname for the first list, by the way, is two parents walking their dogs. So take that into mind for a second. And think about the last time you seen 9 chihuahuas out walking on the sidewalk earlier. Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? The last list, then, if we're going to go into the last list, this is my jack of all trades list effectively here. So this is my list where you don't want as many war dogs as 9. That's totally fine. You don't want to go all in on the big knights either. Again, that's totally fine. You want a little flavor of both. This is the list that I've come up with then, again, within the points values, basically. So let's start ourselves off with something a little bit different, because I'm conscious that in the past 2, I've started with the Tyrant. That's because I own a Tyrant, by the way, for context. I really like the Tyrant, and I plan on using my Tyrant in every game. So that's why I've started the first 2. For the next one, we're going to start with our Ruinator. You've got to have a new model in the list. You've got to have a shiny new model in the list. You've not got many chassis as a Knight player. You've not got many chassis as a Chaos Knight player, even though you've got a few extra ones on top of the Imperial Knights players. But you got to have your new toys in the battlefield every time, don't you? You've got to have those big stumpy robots in there, especially when you get a brand new one whose arm is like a drill, really, to be honest with you. So that's my thinking behind that. Again, he's a great piece, to be honest with you. I think he's more flexible than some people would give him credit for, but he is predominantly a mid to close combat knight, I would say, to be honest with you. With that big flamer, with a fell bore, the missiles maybe give him a little bit of longer range. I personally just like him as a piece to paint, I think. I think he just looks great. I love that fell bore. You could stick bits of sprue on there to make it look like he's got half of a vehicle still clamped onto his fell bore, or if you're feeling even really more fanciful, you could just cut a big hole for the fell bore and then put it into something like a rhino or something like that. That, for me, is a waste of a rhino kit, though, personally, because I'm an Emperor's Children player and we need all the rhinos we can get. So he is the star of this list. Next up, then, we're going to go back to our Despoiler. So my thinking behind the Despoiler in this case is that actually, again, he's that jack of all trades kind of knight, master of none. In this case, I would see him more, and I'm going to refer to this term I used before, your Dread Castellan. That's what I'm going to call him. You fit him with 2 ranged guns, and he's your Dread Castellan. And that's what you use him for. You use him as the gun line, basically. And that's the idea behind that. 335 points for a gun line, not too bad. He's got a good bit of firepower to give out. I think I've seen that dual Gatlins is one of the better ways to run him at the moment, so he'll cut down a good few hordes doing that, no problem at all, to be honest with you. He'll keep you well covered as well in terms of holding the backfield as well. Those bases are monstrous after all, so the bigger the base, I suppose, if you position him well, he'll protect your backfield from deep strike a little bit better. So that's one of my ideas behind that. And then lastly, we're going to go on to the Knight Rampager. I've had my lore spiel. I won't make it again. I love this model. I love the lore behind them. And for me, that's what draws me into a list, is creating a narrative around it here. So these are my 3 big knights. And the idea behind this list is almost based off of hunting in the woods, basically. You have your 3 knights on horseback, and now you've got the hounds. So the hounds we're going to look at again. We're going to look at the huntsman times 2. We're going to go with the carnivore times 2. And we're also going to go with the brigand times 2. This is where this is going to leave us at an interesting point here. So with those 6 war dogs in there, we've got a lot of flexible options. With the 6 war dogs, we've actually reached 1,860 points so far. So on that basis, you could add enhancements to all your big knights, make them really tanked up if you want, basically, and that kind of thing, depending on what detachment you run. I'm sure there's a lot of tasty enhancements that would maybe suit this list quite nicely. And then after that, I suppose if you didn't want to add an enhancement and maybe board presence was more a concern for this particular game, that's when I throw a stalker in. And that brings us to 2,000 points on the nose. You have no room for enhancements though. I personally like an enhancement or 2. Makes me engage with my models a little bit more when I know this knight has like demonic bulwark, something like that. Or something along those lines. It makes me engage with my models a little bit more. But if you just want as many of your big stompy robots on the board as possible, then you're going to have a look at throwing a stalker into the list. It gives you that board presence. As I said, the thinking behind this list is that it's 3 knights and their pack of hounds. That's the big idea behind it, basically, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot to kind of work with there. It gets the flavor of both sides of Chaos Knights in there as well. You're looking at, obviously, you've got the 3 big stompy knights, varied across the range, by the way, because you've got a shooty one, a fighty one, and a little bit of a shooty and fighty one. So gives you a little bit of everything there. You can pick and choose your favorites then by just using them and hurling them at people over and over again. And overall, the strategy for how this would play, I think, and again, I am not a tournament player. I'm not remotely a tournament player, so please don't take any of what I say absolutely seriously in a tournament perspective. I just like building pictures in my head of how these battles go, and I think the Rampager and the Carnivores hurl themselves forwards. That's a master and his hounds. You've got the Ruinator stalking up behind, then accompanied maybe by Huntsmans. They take care of your anti-armor threats. And then you've got your Brigands and your Despoiler then kicking around the backfield, making life generally very difficult for anyone who thinks they can try and do any better. So that's my list anyway. Let me know what you think in the comments. Am I talking absolute nonsense? I'm already looking at these thinking I might change 1 or 2 of them for my own knights list, because currently I only have a Tyrant and an Abominant as my big knights. I have 2 boxes of War Dogs and I have 1 Huntsman built because I was silly and I built one of them as a Loyalist Imperial Knight, so woe whiz me. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like it? Do you not? Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.